Welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast, where we discuss business solutions to help listeners develop and implement action plans for true lean process improvement. I am your host, Patrick Adams. Hello and welcome to the Lean Solutions Podcast. This is Patrick Adams, and my guest today is Steve Johnson. Steve has over 30 years of experience in the automotive industry. He's served as a certified technician at a local GM dealership for about 8 years. Steve developed a service team that would exceed his level of expectation for professional business and work culture needed to create the best service team Berger has ever had. The dealership has received GM Dealer of the Year award 11 times and has continued to break multiple financial records year after year. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited to have you on the show. You as a guest are a little bit different than our normal guests. So I'm excited because you and I ran into each other at a career fair for young teenagers, and we started to talk. And you told me a little bit about the training program that you put together at Berger for technicians, and I was like, oh my gosh. This is something that our listeners have to hear about because it's so powerful, and the results of what you've been able to do, no one can argue that it's working, right?
Yes.
So, Steve, tell us just a little bit more about your background and what you do for Berger Chevrolet.
I'm the service manager here at Berger Chevrolet, and the great thing about here is they allow us to really change anything and everything that we can possibly do to make it better for our employees, our guests, and then ultimately the company as well. So we're constantly looking for ways to improve. And again, we have a lot of people here. I have about 285 employees here. And so we have a lot of wisdom to pull from. So a lot of that is just listening to people and just looking at what they have and trying to improve on everything that we do. So.
Yeah, I love that. And your role at Berger, just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I oversee most of the front of the house, basically all the service writers. We have 8 service writers in my main lane. Then I have a quick lube that has another 4 service writers over there. And I oversee all of our rental departments as well as our business development center as well. So pretty much I do everything with the front of the house, customer interaction, anything.
Yeah. So I want to talk specifically about your training program, but before we do that, what problem did you identify that said, you know what, we need to put some work into how we train people, our technicians specifically? Like, there's a problem that we're experiencing and we need a solution to that. What were some of the issues or the problems that you were faced with prior to having a structured training program?
Yeah. So what it ultimately was is we couldn't find good quality technicians. That was the main thing. We try to advertise and we try to spiff, people coming in, giving them sign-on bonuses and stuff. The problem is there's just not a lot of great technicians out there that are willing to, what I call, bounce from another place to come here. And so they're happy at where they're at. So the other thing that we had with that too is a lot of those people that we would interview that would come, they didn't have the culture that I was looking for. We have a specific culture that we have here at Berger Chevrolet. So they may be a really good technician and a fit where they're at, but it just wasn't a fit for us. Mm-hmm. So we started looking at how can we fix this? And then I have technicians that, I got a technician that's been here for 42 years. He's getting ready to retire. And I started looking around and I'm like, okay, in the next 10 years, I'm going to lose six of my technicians back here. How do we replace them? And so that was, just looking into the future of how we're going to attack this so we don't get left out in the wind. So.
Right. Yeah. Those are some massive challenges that it's interesting to hear that coming from an automotive dealership, because those are the exact challenges that I hear, in the healthcare industry, that I hear in the manufacturing industry, and so many different industries are experiencing some of those same challenges. And so it's interesting just to hear how different industries are responding to that. You guys clearly had a really, really great outcome to what you put together, which was your training program. But, talk to me a little bit about, where did the idea come from to develop this training program? So why did you start it? Obviously, we know the problem that you were experiencing, but why did you go, okay, it's training. That's where we need to go to.
So what initially started, we did have some people that had the drive and the want to do it. They just didn't have the schooling or the finances to do that for them, but they were really good candidates. And that's kind of what kicked that off. And and it's morphed into what it is now. When we first started it, we just started, just kind of side by side with a technician. And it did work. We had results with that, but it wasn't going fast enough for me per se. So we had to evolve that. And then we ran into some problems with, and I'm sure this is across the industry, in any industry, is the quality of people that were coming in. For every 10 people that I would interview, I might get one that was like a good fit for us. And, that would have the quality to even be able to do the job. So that's why we initially started it on one-on-one, but it worked out, but it just wasn't enough. So that's when we came up with a new strategy, and how we have it now is we got it dialed in pretty good. So we've been doing it for about 8-9 years now. So it's been working really good.
So the training path, we're going to talk a little bit about that and kind of get into detail on that. But you did mention earlier, and I also want to back up to this. You mentioned earlier about the culture, and that you guys have a very specific culture at Berger, and probably looking for people that hold certain values. Can you talk to us a little bit about that before we go down that training path?
Sure. So the culture that we're really looking for is you have to have a great attitude. I can train you how to do a job, but if you have a crappy attitude, it really doesn't mix with what we're doing here. You got to be a team player. This is something that you cannot do by yourself. We have to rely on everything from parts to our advisors. Everybody has to be working together to make this happen. And also you have to just be willing to do whatever it takes. There are some times that we have to, just say, hey, this is the way it is. This is what we got to do, figure out a solution, and then implement it. So, and you have to be able to adapt to change here. We're constantly changing. So I would rather have a change and fall on my face and go, that was not a good idea. Let's back this up and start over. I would rather have that than never change at all. So we are constantly changing, constantly. And you got to be able to roll with that. And if you don't adapt to that well, it's like, man, every time I turn around, we're doing something different. We're trying to do this, we're doing this. And the reason we're doing that is because we are trying to get better. And so it's worked very well. And we've even broadened that to our managers, how we get along with other departments within Berger. And it's worked very well in that as well. So.
That's amazing. I love to hear that. And that continuous improvement is necessary. And obviously the results, being GM Dealer of the Year, 11 times and, breaking multiple financial records. Those are the results of you guys continuously improving, never being content with the status quo, but always looking for what's next. How do we make this better? How do we solve this problem? So that's amazing. I love to hear that.
Yes.
And I'm sure it makes a big difference, again, with your culture, when you have people there that know that they have the freedom to come up with, innovative ways to do things or better ways to do things. It makes a difference for the workers too.
For sure. And it comes back to our teams. We build very solid teams, and that is where the culture really grows, because once you get that culture established, everybody starts to have ideas, and they're not my ideas. Most of the stuff that we implemented did not come from me. It was from people that are right in the trenches, and they're going, hey, why don't we try this? And we're like, hey, that's a great idea. Never thought of that. So we start implementing that stuff. And that's why I love working here, is because I do have that authority. We can pretty much change anything at the drop of a hat. So it does work very, very well once you got that culture behind it. And then the team comes behind it, and then they have financial goals that they hit and achieve, and then they really get the buy-in. When they start to see the money come around too, that makes a big difference as well. So,
absolutely, those incentives come back and definitely are icing on the cake.
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about the training path. So a technician, now first, a technician. So talk to our listeners about what do you define as a technician first?
Sure. We have three categories that we have. We have an A technician, a B technician, and a C technician. So your A technician is going to be master certified. They're going to be able to work on anything that comes in the shop. There's not a whole lot of technicians out there. I have over 30 technicians in my shop right now, and there's about 6 that can actually work on just about anything you throw at them. They're certified in it. They have 10 years experience and everything. So obviously it's not going to be somebody that's younger, because you have to have that to be an A tech. And then you have a B tech, which is basically they're going to be very rounded technician as far as their capabilities in their area. So there may be a transmission technician or a drivability or a heavy tech. We even have electric vehicles now, so we got volts and bolts, so that we're working on those. And then we have our specialty techs in there too that will work on like convertible tops and water leaks and air noises and that kind of stuff. So and that's what you would call a B tech. And then you have a C tech, which is basically they are growing and they don't know exactly what they want to do as far as their career. They want to be a heavy tech, or they want to do multiple things, and that's what most techs do anyway. They're going to have a handful of things that they work very well on, and they'll touch a little bit here and there, but they try to stay in their lane of those 5 things or 6 things. So that would be a C tech. They just don't know yet. Their certification's not quite there. Their GM training's not quite there, and that would be a C tech. And so that's where I'm trying to get a person that comes in that knows nothing about cars. They just have a want, and hey, I've always wanted to work on cars, and I think it would be, I worked on my stuff with my dad and my grandpa, and I really I enjoy doing this, and they just need a way to get from that knowing nothing about to get to my C tech, and then we grow them from there as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That so someone coming into your team, they don't necessarily have to have any experience or certifications when they start. You're going to give them all that. They just need to have the attitude, like you said earlier, match up with some of those values, understand that that you guys are continuously improving and moving forward. So they have to fill that piece, but no experience or certifications at all.
They don't have to have anything. So when they start, we're basically going to look for those qualities that we talked about earlier for the Berger culture. And then we look for, obviously they got to be here and on time, and they got to be able to follow an order, and, hey, this is how we do things. We have processes and procedures for pretty much 99% of the job that you do. So if you can follow that, then and be able to change on the fly and adapt to new things that we're doing, that is a very good prime candidate. So what we would do is we would start them in our quick lube area, and they're basically going to learn your basic stuff: tire rotations, air filters, changing the oil, light bulbs and wiper blades, just some maintenance stuff, filters, that kind of thing. So they get in there, and that's where we can really find about their culture, because sometimes you can interview real well, and then you get in here and I'm like, boy, this is not what we were thinking. So this gives us an opportunity and them an opportunity to really shine. And so we've had great success with that, because I've been able to, what I call, weed out some of the stuff, because I'll have somebody that's really excited and they get here, and then 2 weeks into this, they've been late 10 times, and they're like, well, wait a minute, hold up, this isn't working. And then other times, and I'll use a gentleman that we just moved out of there. He came in and really wanted to become a technician, and he actually went on his own and got some certifications while he's working in there, and he was in there for a couple months, and we've actually moved him out into our next phase. Now, if you want, I can talk about that too. But so that's really what we look for at the beginning, is just we want to find out exactly about them. Are they going to be good culture for us? Are they going to be here on time and be able to follow the processes that we have?
So what does your interview process look like then?
So when we interview, basically we, obviously ask the basic questions, but again, we are looking for that culture right up front. That's the number one thing that we're looking for. Are you going to be a good fit here? Because there are some things that maybe we do that wouldn't work well for that person. So just talking to them, asking them some questions, where they want to be, we don't ever want anybody, I don't care if you're a porter here or if you're a master certified technician, we always want you to grow. So obviously everybody grows at different paces, but I want everybody to grow. So even if you're on the top of your game, you're a master certified technician, we are going to stretch you to become better. Whether it's maybe going outside of and getting some schooling, or just looking to the future for electronics in the electric vehicles and that kind of thing. So we always want to grow and stretch. Doesn't matter if we're growing a little bit, but I want you to grow somewhere. So that's my main job, is I really need to grow everybody. And so that's what we do.
Hey everyone, this is Patrick. So sorry to interrupt this episode of the Lean Solutions podcast, but I felt it necessary to take a quick moment and personally invite you to the Lean Solutions Summit on October 2nd through the 4th this fall, 2023. The theme of this year's global summit is leadership, people, purpose, passion. You do not want to miss this amazing experience with the top process improvement experts from your industry. No matter what industry you're working in, this summit has value for you. The summit offers 4 different industry tracks to include healthcare, corporate, higher education and nonprofit, and finally, government. Our opening keynote is Chris McChesney, the lead author of the #1 Wall Street Journal best-selling business book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. The Ops sisters, Kathy Miller and Shannon Carrolls, the authors of Steel Toes and Stilettos, will be joining us, as well as yours truly and over 20 other speakers. The final day of the summit is full of workshops, and there are limited seats for a tour of Menlo Innovations with Richard Sheridan and Zingerman's Mail Order with Dr. Jeff Leiker, author of The Toyota Way. Early bird pricing is now available at FindLeanSolutions/Summit-2023, or you can check the show notes for a link. Now, back to the show. Perfect. Okay, so now let's get to that training path. So you gave us a little bit of a kind of a view of what it looks like when people, first are introduced or come in. Can you just kind of walk us through that entire training path from start to finish, and what does that look like? Because it's very structured, right?
Yes.
Do things. Okay.
Yes, for sure. So once we do the interview, get them started in our quick loop, we make sure that they can do the basics that we talked about. Again, we want to make sure about the attitude, all that stuff, culture. And then we have our next step program is we have a master certified technician that will just work right with you. You're going to be working under him. And so when we feel, I have another manager in the quick loop, once he and I get together and we're like, okay, who are we going to move out? Who's really blooming? And we get to that point, then we actually will move them to what we call our 5 bays. And that is where our master certified technician takes over, and you're going to learn everything pretty much on a car. They're not going to be pulling engine and trans and that kind of stuff, but they're going to do the basic stuff. You're going to be doing wheel bearings, tie rod ends, some slight oil leaks, programming, light diagnostics. We do maintenance, services and transmissions and stuff like that. They're going to do all that stuff, alignments, tires, brakes. And so you actually will work under that gentleman's number, because you obviously have to be certified. Now, why he's doing this, he is working on a training path for them specifically. He's going to be getting certified through the state for brakes and steering suspension, because that's pretty much what they're going to be working on back there. And so he'll be working on that portion of it. As soon as you get moved to that spot, also, he starts a GM training path for them. So they have to get what we call the fundamentals down through General Motors, and then he works on a path for them that will work for them, because not everybody's going to go in the same category. And so that is his thing. That's his whole job. That's all he does all day long. And so he has between 3 and 7 technicians at a time, depending on what we have going on in the shop. And then it would really depend on him as far as this person is ready to move out. And then we start our next phase of the training path, which would be pairing them up with a technician in the shop. And this is kind of the final phase of the training. And this is where they're pretty much on their own. But if they come into a roadblock, they do have somebody that will help them out. And so everything that we do is computerized. So They're very versed in looking up schematics and that kind of stuff. So they know the basics coming into the shop. And then usually about 6 months, then we, again, depending on the person, they go from there and then they go on their own. And but at that time, they're going to be that C technician and actually starting to be that B technician at that point.
So is there like a formal exam? Is there is it the master technicians that are determining that? How do you certify them, or are there any formal exams or things that they have to do in order to
Yes.
move through the process?
Yes, there is. There's two testings that they can do. They can do the state certification, which is different in each state. I'm in Michigan, but each state has different certifications for a technician to work on a vehicle, and they have to be certified in the category that they're working on. So there's 8 categories. So they can be certified in steering and suspension, brakes, electrical, and light engine. They'll have usually those when they come out of the 5As. And they'll be state certified. Now, you can be ASC certified, but you have to have 2 years minimum experience in the field. And so a lot of them will be to that point by the time they come out. And so they would be ASC. And we prefer the ASC because that's industry standard across the board. So you can go to any state with ASC and work on any vehicle. So.
Okay, perfect. So not necessarily, you don't necessarily have an internal certification necessarily. These are external third-party certifications, but you prep them internally to the point where they're ready. And then once they've passed that, then they move to the next level. And
Right.
you mentioned once they're out on their own, is there anything that you do on a, periodically throughout the year on any kind of frequency to kind of re-evaluate skill sets and things going forward? Or are there other trainings that they attend, or anything like that going forward once they're on their own?
Yes. So once a technician, even when they're in the 5As, they have constant training, and it's through General Motors. So obviously every year we have new products coming out, so we have to be up on all that stuff. So they have to do all that training. Even if they aren't going to work in that specific area, they still have to do the training in that. And that's through GM. And so that portion of it, you have to do to move out. If you don't get that done, we can't move you. So that portion has to be done.
Okay, perfect. And then you obviously, as a maintenance technician, they need to have tools. And I'm just wondering, like, this kind of popped in as you were talking, like, do they need to come to the table with a toolbox full of all the tools they need, and how would they know what tools they need or anything like that? Or does Berger provide that? What does that look like?
So that was kind of the last piece of the puzzle that we have added to the last, in the last 6 months. That was another hurdle that we had, that, people were getting into the 5As and they didn't have enough tooling to be on their own. They do, when they first go over there, they used the gentleman that is training them a little bit of his tools, and then they would just buy it as they go. It didn't work real well. So that was one thing that we kind of morphed into what we have now. But so what they can do now is we have a rental program. And so what we do is as a dealership, we go buy the tools and the toolbox, and it's a basic starter set. And what we do is we do it on a rent to own basis. So it's retention for them to stay here with us. And it's also a great tool when they're done. So what we do, most of them, because each box is a little bit different, but on average, it's about 3 years to rent it. And it's a weekly rent that they pay us, and it's interest-free to them. And if they're here at the end of that period, which is 2.5 to 3 years, depending on the box, that toolbox becomes theirs. They bought it, and interest-free. And then we go and get another box, and we start over and do it again. Now, if something happened, where they say, hey, I found a different job, or I had to move out of state, or whatever it be, and they're a year and a half into it, they would just leave the tools here, and it would have been renting that whole time while they were here, and then we would rent that to somebody else and start over. So it's a really good retention tool that we use again. And what we found was some of these young people were going out, and we have tool trucks that come around, and the next thing you know, they're $20,000 in debt. And I'm like, what in the world are you doing? And because you don't have to do that. So that's when we started looking into this with the tools, and it's worked very well. And again, it's just that last little thing that we're trying to take all the excuses away from anybody that would ever get into this as a career, taking all the excuses away. Hey, I couldn't afford the toolbox, or I didn't have the training. We're taking all that away, and that's what we look for is a problem or a solution. So that's all that is. So hopefully that explains it a little bit better. Because again, what it boils down to is I don't want them to use that as an excuse and not to be able to follow the career path that they want to do. So tools work really well. And again, it becomes theirs at the end of this. They're smiling year to year. They're like, this is a great, and again, it's interest free. We just want to, get them all the tools that they need to succeed.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. That piece of it alone is a great incentive to attract, individuals who want to get into the industry, but, are wondering, that would be my first question is, well, I don't have all the tools that I need. Right. So, and the fact that they're not necessarily Berger owned, they will be yours in the future. So I love that as well. How long does it take? You mentioned a year and a half in. I heard a couple other dates out there. So from the time that you start the training program, if I come in and interview brand new, haven't don't know how to do anything with a car, to the point where I'm a certified technician, left on my own with my own tools, and I'm and you guys are comfortable with me, what's the time frame for that?
So it really depends on the person, but it averages is between 2 and 4 years. And again, it's going to be where we feel comfortable with the quality of work that you do, that kind of stuff. And obviously the certification, it depends on, there's some people that can take a test and really pass it and retain it. And there's other people that are really good with their hands, but they can't get it from on paper. So they might have to take the test a couple times. So, it really depends on that person, but it's on average is about 2 to 4 years. I have had some people that were a little less and a little bit more, but that's about where that is. Now, I do have, on a different note, I do have a technician that actually loves what they do in the 5 bays. So, and that's the farthest that he wants to go in his training, and his capability is right there as well. So it works really good because he stays right there and he loves what he does, and he's a really good worker for us. And but that is where his career path stopped as far as growing. Now his growth comes with different things that he can do within the team, maybe helping some other people, as they come in and they're pretty green, and helping the gentleman that's a master certified gentleman that's back there training. He might have to step out for lunch, and then he could step in and just oversee if there's something like that. So there's other growths that we do with him, but his skill level that's where he's going to be. So
right, yeah. And to that point, what's your way of tracking where people are at on their journey? I just think about, in a lot of organizations, they use like a visual training matrix, or they have some kind of software that they're using to track that, or maybe they have a training manager who keeps track of that. Like, what's your way of just tracking individuals as they go through their process, and where they're at with their tool rental, and where they're at with, what level they're at, and what they have to do next in order to progress? How do you track all of that?
So we are constantly doing what I call coaching sessions, one-on-ones. And we are constantly saying, hey, this is what is next for you. So this is where we want you to be. And we usually have a time frame on there. Depending on what it is, it might be 6 months or it might be 2 months. But we're constantly coaching and having those one-on-ones where we can say, hey, this is where you should be. And, if they make that, and some people do, and they blow it out of the water and they're further, then we have to reevaluate when they get there. And some people just fall a little bit short, and then we have to take it back a little bit and say, okay, this is what we want you to do next. This is the training path. Have you done this with your GM training? Have you done this with your certifications? That kind of stuff. And then and that is done mostly by the managers that are overseeing them. 99% of them. We also have a shop foreman manager that gets involved with their productivity, finds out, what kind of workload that they've been working on, and we constantly change that via computer because everything is dispatched through a computer. So we're constantly trying to get them to go to that next level. So once they hit that, then we put what I call dangle a carrot. You get to the next one, and obviously every time this happens, there's pay with it. So there's a financial reward as they go through these steps. And I would love to say that there's hey, at 6 months, you're going to be here, and at a year and a half, you're going to be here. It's just, unfortunately, with the person, it could be less or more depending on the person. So we adapt very well with that because not everybody learns at the same pace. So it works very well. But how we do that is constant communication and one-on-ones. That's where we have a lot of growth, even for us as Berger, because they come up with solutions of stuff that I wasn't even thinking of. So those one-on-ones are very important, and constant feedback both ways make it work.
Absolutely. No, that's great. I love to hear that. Well, I love what you're doing, Steve, at Berger, and obviously the results speak for themselves. Some pretty amazing things that are happening, and the training path that you guys have put together is clearly one that others can look at and say, this is the right approach. For I'm just thinking through, maybe there's listeners on that are in the manufacturing industry, who are having those similar issues. Now, you might not be a car dealership, working with automotive technicians, but maybe you're a manufacturing plant working with setup techs or maintenance personnel or whatever it may be. Having a structured training program with incentives and levels to move through, and having that open communication to talk with people to understand what's their vision for their future, what do they see for their own personal development, and then what do you need as an organization from them. What's your expectation of them and the growth path that they're on. So all of that is not just applied in your industry, but it can be applied to any other industries.
Yes.
I love that you talked about the communication piece and the one-on-ones too, because a huge part of this is the leadership that you have and that your team has in this process. And, so it's not just about putting a structured program in place. It's also about the leaders that are behind that and how they support it and ensure that it continues forward. Right. So you guys being with them one-on-one communicating, that's a huge part of this.
For sure. That's the only way we really know how far they're growing. Obviously we can look at the numbers, the data, how many hours they're turning, and that kind of stuff, and the quality of work. And, are we having comebacks that they forgot to do something on? We track all that stuff, but to sit down with them and really see where they're at, that's where, and things change because, 6 months ago we could have had a one-on-one and they're like, well, I really think that I'm actually going to go into heavy now instead of, the drivability side of it. So it's really definitely needed when you do these. And it's good on anything, really. Anything that you do doesn't necessarily have to be the dealership, but you have to have constant communication and open ears and open doors.
Absolutely. So in the beginning, when we first started, we talked about the problem that you guys identified, being that you were having a hard time finding people or bringing people in. Also, maybe turnover was an issue. So has this structured training program and this training path that you've created, has it helped? Are you seeing, reduced turnover? Are you finding people to be able to plug in, and are they staying with you long term? What does it look like now after, again, you've been doing this for, what'd you say, 8
years?
Okay. Yeah.
So how we measure success, obviously, is how many technicians that we had through the program that are still here and producing. So we have 6 technicians that have successfully went through everything and are in the shop actually turning money, making money, generating money for the business. So, and that's huge. And again, it goes back to, those are specific technicians that we have invested in. The culture is there. And, I've had technicians that we've had in the past that they're great technicians, but the culture wasn't there. And unfortunately, we just had to part ways because it just wasn't working. But when you get somebody that the culture is there with everything that's been going on, the training and everything, you're pretty much unstoppable at that point. You can just about break anything, and that's where we're at. And of course, now I've had some technicians that have moved out of state, and some people that have bounced and went to a different dealer or went to an independent, and that's going to happen, and we knew that. But to have the success that we've had with the 6, and again, we have still more in the process. Those are just all the way through and have been here for many years and are doing very well. And again, these are younger folks. They got 24 to 26 years old, and doing very well. How I look at it too is if they would have went to college, even like a tech kind of a place, like we used to have Ferris State here in Michigan, that had a automotive, schooling that they could go through. It was a 2-year program. And so I looked at how much that would cost them to do that. And, obviously they're making money this whole time while they're here. So if I can take that cost of that out and the tools on top of that, and they're making money, it's just, it really is a win-win for everybody. The benefit for us is we do have those technicians. And again, I'm looking for the future. I won't be in the business probably 25, 30 years from now, but they will be. And so that's how we got to look at it.
Absolutely. I love that. The long-term focus is the key. So that's amazing. Thank you for what you're doing, Steve. And I'm sure Berger is very happy with obviously the results that are coming from the work that you and your team are doing. Steve, if anybody they have a question or they want to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for them to contact you?
They can go right to our website, either bergerchevy.com, which is BERGER, Chevy.com, or they can email me directly. If they have any questions, I'd be more than happy to talk or chat via email or phone. You can it's sjohnson@bergerchevy.com. So.
Perfect. And we'll drop both the link to the website as well as your email into the show notes. So if anybody's interested to get a hold of Steve with any questions, feel free to reach out to him, by going to the show notes and grabbing his contact info. Steve, again, it's been great to have you on. Really appreciate your time and just the work that you're doing at Berger. Obviously, those technicians are set up for success, and you guys are experiencing it. So great job to all of you and your team there.
Thank you. I appreciate you having on the show. I really enjoyed it.
All right. Take care, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Lean Solutions Podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe. This way you'll get updates as new episodes become available. If you feel so inclined, please give us a review. Thank you so much.